as I don't, to be quite honest. I was a little three sheets to the wind, as they say, last year, ahead of introducing my friend and brother, James O'Keefe, last year at the Forbidden Gala in New Jersey. I was a little depressed a few weeks after the quote-unquote election with the evisceration of the United States Constitution. And by the way, let's just give a really warm hand again to James O'Keefe, our American muckraker. This man has gone to hell and back, and as I tell him every day, it's just beginning. We have a lot of battles ahead, but if anybody's got the fortitude to handle it, it is James O'Keefe. So last year, while I was a little bit inebriated, I muttered a lot about gulags, and I do want to say, for the record, 1 year on, I'm already beginning to be proven right about that drunken prognostication. But tonight, special night, it's my honor, once again, to present an award to a close friend of mine. This year, to Steve Cortes. Much like with the first two NYYRC galas, where I was honored to present the inaugural Cortes Award to one of my mentors, the General, Stephen K. Bannon. I was sober for that one. And then last year in New Jersey, to my brother-in-arms, James O'Keefe. This year, I'm here to present the John Foster Dulles Award to this other great Steve of NYYRC. This award is named for the great statesman who, under Eisenhower, advocated an aggressive stance against communism throughout the world. Steve Cortes certainly exemplifies that proud legacy in the battles he fights today in the culture war. For me, Steve Cortes is, again, a close friend and truly a brother-in-arms in every sense. Steve, or as I and his wonderful daughter Kingsley, seated right here at the front table, we refer to him as Esteban. Esteban is one of the great battlers we have in the public debate. He is one of the MAGA-iest personalities in the entire arena. Steve was on the President's National Hispanic Advisory Council during the campaigns. He wrote numerous stellar columns for Real Clear Politics, including one later turned into a similarly stellar Prager video dispelling the Charlottesville hoax. As one would expect, this did not endear him to his fellow CNN contributors and CNN brass, where he was frequently on air at the time. The operative term being was on the air, as from then on, they underhandedly benched him once his truthful, accurate analysis was released, as it undermined their superlatively fallacious fake news narrative. Steve was the 2020 campaign spokesman, and most recently, he was on Newsmax nightly. I hear that's going well. Too soon. Lesson to all, don't force vax this bad hombre. Day in and day out, this patriot, as he refers to us, his viewers and listeners, presents the case for populist nationalist conservatism beautifully. His Chalk Talk presentations show us deplorables, also what he refers to us, his viewers and listeners, the numbers behind the public policy debates. As an old school Wall Street guy, as I am, in fact, that's how we first got to know each other, through those circles, his understanding of markets and economics are in the top tier of guys and gals in the domestic political debate. Now, it's no secret that Esteban and I have had our disagreements. For instance, he refers to Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe as, and I quote, the pinnacle of human musical achievement. Like most rational people, I disagree with his assessment. He and I have also disagreed many times on air. Once live on Chicago Drive Time Radio. Back then, he was on WIND, AM 560, broadcasting out of beautiful Schaumburg, Illinois. I believe that was in Joe Walsh's old time slot, right, Steve? He suggested on air that the Russian incursion into Ukraine was not our circus and not our monkeys, to use an old Polish proverb. As a Pole, I disagreed and compared him to Neville Chamberlain on live radio, on his show. Well, that Georgetown history major did not take too kindly to that, and he got apoplectic. And for the next two segments, we bickered like sorority sisters, or like Raheem Kassam and everyone in Raheem's life. And then, of course, more recently, as it's no secret that I support the clear right choice in the pending Ohio Senate primary, Josh Mandel, and he is for the other guy. Thank you, Jenna Ellis. Jenna Ellis gets it. But he's for the other guy. I forget the guy's name, J.D. Timken or something. So for this year's Young Republican Halloween party a few weeks ago, I went as Steve in full Steve regalia, Nantucket salmon khakis, and I love J.D. Vance t-shirt that I made myself because those actually are not made. Nobody would buy them. And Kingsley was gracious enough to loan me one of the family sombreros. I think we nailed the costume, but with my footwear, I did diverge. For the record, I did not wear Gucci loafers, and I did wear socks. I will close this introduction by quoting an introduction given by President Trump of Steve last year in New Mexico, when Steve was invited to speak at one of President Trump's mega rallies. This is President Trump speaking. He happens to be Hispanic, but I've never quite figured it out because he looks more like a wasp than I do. So I haven't figured that one out. But I will tell you, there is nobody that loves this country more than my friend, Steve Cortes. So Steve, come on up and accept this award. You Gucci loafer wearing deplorable patriotic bad hombre, I love you. Coming up and give us some of that good old fashioned Steve Esteban Cortes chalk talk. And oh yeah, get on Getter.
By the way, love the music. I didn't ask Gavin Wax, I instructed Gavin Wax that I had to be able to wear this Miami Hurricane turnover chain style, and he did not comply. All right, speaking of not complying, I want to speak to you folks about a couple things, and I want to speak to you about not complying. Do not comply. Let me say that one more time. Do not comply. Now, let me talk about some people who did not comply with tyrannical authority. On this day, 5 miles south of here, George Washington, he bade farewell to his officers at Fraunces Tavern. He did not comply. He and his men, these revolutionaries, these founding fathers, in my opinion, the most amazing men to walk the earth since the apostles, they did not comply. Here's what George Washington said in a very tearful goodbye to his officers. He said, "With a heart full of love and gratitude, I now take leave of you. I most devoutly wish that your latter days may be as prosperous and happy as your former ones have been glorious and honorable." George Washington. I would like to echo that exhortation to you now today, these centuries later, because I do believe that America has a glorious past, that we are inheritors of an unbelievable history, an unbelievable gift, a gift that has largely been squandered, and squandered, frankly, by people my age and older, to be saved by people your age and younger. So that is my exhortation to you, if I can echo George Washington. Now, regarding do not comply, let me be specific here. There's a lot of aspects to not complying, but I think the most important by far is as it relates to employment. This idea of jab or job. This is insanity. It is tyranny. It is evil. It is unscientific. It is unconstitutional. Do not comply. Now, here's the good news. We're starting to push back, and we're starting to win. And in some red states, specifically Florida, Tennessee, Montana, we see movement from the states to push back and to protect American workers and protect American citizens from tyrannical edicts. But we need that in many, many more states. We need it in all of the red states. And of course, we need it on a national level. We're also starting to win, thankfully, in court. And litigation has an important role to play here. But we can't rely only on the courts. We know that. But the courts are part of the solution here regarding not complying. Now, Another topic that I want to talk to you about, folks, I mentioned that there's a great weight upon you, really, and a weight that you don't deserve. I think young people in America today, to put it quite bluntly, have been screwed. I think you have been generationally cheated. I really mean that. And again, by people my age and older, what has been done to you fiscally is so totally irresponsible, it's almost hard to fathom. But you can't cry about it, you can't just complain about it, you've got to get busy fixing it, right? One of the things that I think has been ruined, frankly, for American families that has to be changed and that I believe can be changed, and which I hope is very, very important to all of you, are policies, and this to me is more important than any other issue in my view for the America First agenda. Policies that will once again allow families in America to thrive on one income. Now, by the way, speaking of families, I have my wonderful wife, Holly, here, 2 of our daughters here, 2 of our 4 children. I'm blessed with an absolutely amazing family. And many of you here are probably, given your ages, you're probably already starting families, or at least thinking about starting families. And I want you to have wonderful families. And just to be clear here, by the way, I will be accused by the left, of course, of saying, well, I'm requiring that women have to be home and that they have to be barefoot and pregnant at all times. Now, clearly, many women will choose to be home. However, number one, I'm not saying that it has to be the woman. It may be the man in many families. But what I am saying is that families need to, again, have the option to have a single income, comfortably support a family. This was a norm in America. This was a norm. When I was young, middle-class families, I come from one of them, a middle-class family with 6 children who all went to Catholic school throughout on a single income. It was the norm in America, and it went away. And we hardly talk about it. It went away for policy reasons. Globalization and uncontrolled immigration being the top 2 culprits. But here's the good news, we can reverse both of those. And if we do, the movement that does, if the America First movement figures this out, it will be the dominant political movement in American public life for decades to come. Now, let me be specific too, and I won't get into detail here. It's not going to be a white paper presentation, I promise you, because by the way, part of why I'm going to be brief is I understand there's going to be dancing after this, and the things that lead to family formation and ultimately lead to reproduction often involve alcohol and dancing. So I am fully aware of that. So let's get to that fairly quickly here. But first, just briefly, and by the way, if you want the details in terms of policy and what I prescribe for an agenda for single income families again, I wrote an article about this at the National Pulse, which is an excellent publication. You may read that article. The National Pulse is founded and led, of course, by Natalie Winters, as we all know. Raheem Kassam is occasionally her intern and sometimes helped her with these articles. But listen, in all seriousness, I point out that I think the 3 most important policy changes to get there, to get back to a single family income. Number 1 is educational choice. People are far more likely to have a spouse stay home, a parent stay home with a child, and have more children if they know that we are funding students rather than corrupt public school systems. Number two, financial incentives. I really believe we should do a lot of what countries like Hungary are doing right now and provide generous financial incentives to having children to raise the birth rate in the United States. And then number 3, and this has been a bad word for a long time in Republican circles, but I alluded to it earlier, protectionism. I want to protect American workers and protect American industry. It was a great start what President Trump did and what he did with tariffs, but they need to be expanded. They need to be broadened. They need to be made permanent. We need to protect American industry. And how do we protect American workers? The number 1 way that we do that is by restricting even legal immigration, by phasing out or all out eliminating work visas, by totally eliminating illegal migration. And by the way, I say this as a son of an immigrant, as a proud Hispanic, as a son of a legal immigrant. We are not doing immigration right. A pause, in my view, a moratorium on even legal immigration makes great sense and would propel the America First movement forward. My favorite author, G.K. Chesterton, he observed this. He said, "The most extraordinary thing in the world is an ordinary man and an ordinary woman and their ordinary children." If we pursue the right mix of policies, of populist, economic, nationalist policies, the America First movement will pave the way for many more of those extraordinary families and a far more extraordinary country than we have today. One final point I want to make for you. I want to thank you for engaging, because you are young and you are in New York City. Now, supposedly, that is a demographic group and a location, a geography that is hostile to the America First movement. You are showing us here, through your bravery, through your advocacy, through your enthusiasm, the exact opposite. We cannot cede the cities. We cannot cede the centers of culture. New York is the capital of the world, and we will not cede New York City, nor will we cede young people. And by the way, the America First movement has a track record already, as young as this movement is, it has a track record already of winning over what were considered previously untouchable constituencies. For example, I mentioned Hispanics. Let's talk specifically about New York City. In the Bronx, which is one of the most diverse places in the United States, 90% minority, President Trump, from 2016 to 2020, he doubled his raw vote total in the Bronx, and he increased on margin. In Los Angeles County, which is the most populous county in America, incredibly diverse, he gained 500,000 votes from 2016 to 2020 and increased in percentage margin. My point here is the trend is our friend. We are already winning over constituencies which were previously deemed unreachable, and I believe that urban people, young people, are the next wave of that if we have the guts and the boldness to go there. I know all of you do. And I want you to join me in helping, by the way, in 2024, and yes, I'm going to say this boldly, in re-electing Donald Trump for a third time.